Hello and welcome to Mind Gourmet. My name is Nina Kaiser. I'm the co-founder of Mind Gourmet and as always, your host today. My today's guest is empath, dream expert, psychic medium and author of the beautiful fable, A Journey Within, LouAnne Ludwig. Welcome, LouAnne. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Nina. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. So we are already two people and who knows how many more. And before we dive into our conversation, I want to introduce you to those people who maybe don't know you yet. LouAnne Ludwig was a hard-driving real estate agent who found herself called to a higher vocation by voices she didn't understand. She embarked on a remarkable journey into metaphysical practices and spiritual growth, and then channeled her experience for others to learn from. She demonstrates how easy it is to change our lives for the better and infuse them with new meaning and balance. Her empathic practice in dream analyzing has assisted hundreds with cutting through their defenses, helping them to see exactly what they need to bring peace and harmony into their everyday lives. LouAnne lives in Southern California. Her new book is A Journey Within. Speaking of a journey, I would like to open this interview with my question, and this is, can you tell us a little more about your journey and how you became who you are today?
Well, I've lived a long and beautiful life. I've had some ups and downs, just like everyone. And of course, all of them make us who we are. I was quite intuitive as a child. And then, lived through a time where I began to feel different than many people because I at first didn't realize everyone wasn't exactly like me. And then I started to feel a little like an outsider until I began to embrace my gifts. And as an adult, I utilized them a lot in my business as a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied metaphysics heavily for, probably the last 30 years or more, and used and learned some of the things I would learn tools and I would read a book and I would be so excited about it. And then, as time would go on though, life would go crazy again and dramas would happen and pretty soon I would forget, everything would drop aside again. So when I finally came to a point in my life where I'd had a spiritual experience that really opened up my gifts, I started to write stories, and I actually channeled a lot of wisdom readings for myself and actually wrote a lot of stories. And many of them were exactly what ended up in my book in the long run. But at the time, what I wrote them for was to help myself really learn those aspects, those processes, and integrate them into my everyday life, really integrate them in.
Mm-hmm.
And one at a time, I learned them and integrated them. And then after I really became an expert at them and they created a very solid base for me to launch being empathic and living my gifts and shining my light in the world in a new and different way, I decided to gather them all together and put them into a book form, and wrote some more stories and polished them out and created a cohesive book, but each chapter stands alone so that the reader can go through and read one chapter at a time if they wish, to refresh themselves, read the whole book, however they want to utilize the tools. But I'm telling you, even if they only take one of the tools, it is going to be life-changing for them. They're wonderful tools. It's a wonderful way to build a nice, strong base to launch from into other areas.
Oh yeah, they are. I so enjoyed reading all the chapters. And one of the details, by the way, that I terribly liked is that every chapter starts with this little introduction, but it's every time a little bit different from before. And by reading that, I kind of got to know the characters better. I think that is a brilliant idea. But I wanted to go into the introduction first because you mentioned your life being quite crazy for a while during your spiritual journey. So this made me curious. What happened?
Well, actually, my husband was unaware of most all of my gifts. I mean, we've been married for, I don't know, I think 42, 43 years. Isn't that terrible? I can't remember the exact number anymore. But I've been together with him since I was, I think, 15 years old. And so he knows me very well, but he didn't know the side of me, especially when my empathic gifts just blossomed out. He didn't know any of that. Well, I was being guided from spiritual guides, I would say. Now I call that my higher self, to learn these tools. And chapter 6 talks about seagulls and the crazy experience that Aleksandr in the book had with these seagulls who kept reappearing and creating crazy havoc in his life. Well, in my life, the seagulls were ants in my house, and it was crazy making. They were incessant, but I was committed to not use poison, to not poison my environment, to not kill anything. You know, I just really wanted to be pure and spiritual about it. And I tried everything. I was using all of the processes I was being taught, and I would have it under control, and then, you know, I'd blink and more would appear. So that's mostly the worst time. My husband literally had to think I was crazy because he didn't know I was being guided through all this. He didn't know I was in my mind writing a chapter down the road. You know what I mean? He didn't know that this was leading to where I am today. But he was patient, and I had asked him to acquiesce to not pulling out the poison. And that was a huge concession on his part. My son is a grown adult also and works with my husband. So he was in and out a lot. And I watched his children at the time. He only had the first child. And he had to think his mother was going nuts, seriously, because he wasn't in on the behind the scenes things either. They just, but they both, you know, must have made jokes behind my back. They must have, right? But anyway, it all turned out great. Everybody's on board with what I'm doing now, and knowing, you know, how intuitive and very tuned in I am. And, you know, they appreciate all the gifts that all that crazy making times led to. So that was that. That's what I mean about crazy making. That's one example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine how that might have been. So in the journey within, there is Aleksandr, then the little monkey that I would pronounce Manuka,
Yeah.
and some wise, all-knowing entity that sometimes is called God, sometimes not. So why did you choose the characters in the way you chose them, and what do they actually stand for?
Okay. The first character is a young boy by the name of Aleksandr, and he is really walking in my shoes in a more simplified manner. So he is symbolically me, but I chose a boy instead of a girl because it would be as far from me as possible. And I chose a child so that, because of the simplicity of a child's mind and mannerisms, you know, as adults, we have so much baggage, and we, gosh, especially women, I think, complicate things more in our minds. I wanted it just plain and simple. And I also chose the name Aleksandr as the male version of my granddaughter Lexi, because
Hmm.
She is very bright, very fun-loving, and kind, and just exemplified everything that I wanted in my character. So that's the character Aleksandr, who absorbed things like a sponge from the mentor, the godlike character who I'll speak of in a moment. So Manuka is a monkey in the story, and his name came from a very special golden honey that has medicinal holistic properties.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's where his name came from. And Manuka actually evolves through the stories as well. And then we find that really he is symbolic of our God self within, the peace of God we or universe we each carry within ourselves that connects us to each other. I believe I have a piece of the universe in me, you have a piece of the universe in you. My desk even has a piece of the universe, right? And that we're all connected by a flowing, um, some people call it the Holy Spirit. So the Holy, something portion of God, all that is. And then the God figure in the book, I'm glad that you noticed that that God figure actually evolved. He starts out as sort of an emanating light God far away figure, which was my childlike view of God. And then he evolves to have much more humanistic characteristics, which my life evolved with also in my search for the truth of the universe and God and trying to figure everything out. Anyway, I needed a portion of time where I saw God in a more human, personalized manner so that I could feel the love that emanates from pure positive energy in like I could picture a heavenly father put his arms around me and pass love to me. I needed that in my search for all of this. And then evolve to realizing the pure positive energy of the universe that's in us and is all of us and is all knowing and all accepting and all wisdom filled and just so many things, all that is. Those are my characters.
And I remember now thinking of Manuka first, that it was so interesting how he showed up in the different chapters. At first, when Aleksandr met the wise one, Manuka was gone. Then it changed. And at the end, I remember this beautiful scene where Aleksandr gets into this cave and there they are playing, the two. And I totally like this because I believe God, source, energy, the universe, first, it's closer than us to us than anything else. And I'm sure it's playful.
Yes.
It, I don't know how to call it.
Right, right. I, that's it. Because Manuka was gone every time, every now and then. I experienced that in my journey. Where is God? Where is God? You know, and I think a lot of people do, or they'll get angry and push the whole universal, just kind of go into themselves and think we're in control of everything, and we're really not in control of anything. Let's face it, right? We're here to experience, and we're not in control of anything.
Yep, and it's beautiful to watch Aleksandr learning his lessons, and I wish everybody would learn as fast as he. He's really good. And I'm remembering he learns about setting intentions, tuning into the voices of his fears, staying mindful, the importance of gratitude, and also surrendering and letting go. And there were, of course, more, but these were the ones that I remember most strongly. So I would like to ask you to expand a little bit on why that is so important, what he learned for us.
Yes. When we live our lives in a grateful manner, it raises our vibration. It raises us up to enjoy life on a higher platform, to see the beauty in everything. Where we lie, where our focus lies, that's what gets bigger for us. So the more grateful we are, we're of course putting our focus on the good, right? On the good things that surround us. And therefore those things multiply and come closer to us and become a larger part of our life. That's the beauty of living a gratitude filled life.
Yeah.
And branching out from that, to me, intention setting was something I did even before these exercises. But I did it in a more removed, larger way every now and then when something was really going wrong or going askew in my life. I would meditate on it and, try to figure out how can I reframe this for myself. Um, and then I would set an intention. But now intention setting is part of my every breath almost. I mean, I set intentions all day. I start my day with an overall intention to have a joy-filled day and meet uplifting people and have interactions that are beneficial to everyone concerned, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I walk into each segment of my day, um, setting, like today, I set the intention that speaking with you would just be fun and filled with all kinds of wonderful information that would be benefiting to anyone who might listen. And I thank you. I thank you. So, those things, and meditating is another thing. I don't know if that's one that you mentioned, but it also helps to raise our vibration and connect us to the universal constructs that can help us in our lives. And I forget what else you said. Forgiveness. That one's a really big one.
Oh,
Forgiveness.
yeah.
Forgiveness is huge. Um, and listening to that monkey mind within us, which is showing us our fears and looking straight at them in order to overcome those fears. There's techniques in the book that talk about that. So I don't know what you want to pick and choose to talk about today, but I'm putting that in your hands.
I would like to zoom in on that dramatic moment where Aleksandr realizes that he is not getting rid of the birds. I mean, he eventually does, but
yes.
there was this moment in which he actually, in the way I have it still in mind, thought he needed to get up and this was something he would never learn. But eventually the whole thing turned around.
Yes.
How did that happen?
That one was the epiphany of turning it over to the universe and asking for help. That is a huge epiphany for us all, because even the technique of having voices in our head. Okay, if you listen, everybody has voices in their head that just yak at us. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
right? We may have already made a decision on something and they just yak at us and tear us down. What about this? What about that? And you may have done concerting, discerning, thoughtful time with whatever this issue is, but these yakking voices can pretty much wake us up in the middle of the night. They can take us over. And the technique on that is to notice it and then step back and relax into yourself and allow those voices to fade, because you're not going to engage them. So they're going to fade. They will fade if you just watch them. But Nina, every now and then we have something that is so incredibly huge going on. The drama is just like, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then, just like for Aleksandr, when those ants, there, look at me with the ants, right? The seagulls came back yet again, and he really thought he had licked it for good. He just gave it up. He just surrendered. And then the universe could fill it in for him in ways that he would have never been able to do. Like all these little tools are just structures of us still doing. But the truth is surrendering to the universal forces and allowing the godlike pieces of the world to come forth. A person might enter your life who has words that just bowl you over the timing of them, or read something out of the blue that isn't out of the blue because it is so in tune to whatever that is that you just surrendered to the universe to help you with. Things like that. And that's what happened for Aleksandr. He finally learned that whole surrender thing. And then everything fell away, and that was the end. That was the end. But it's funny that you bring this up. I got to tell you a story. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, please.
I was just thinking about that chapter the other day, and I thought, I used to, for the longest time, I mean, I was going through the editing process and all the processes we go through when we publish a book. I couldn't even go back and read that chapter for so long because I didn't want it to reignite the whole thought of ants in me again, right? Because the seagulls, the ants, right? They were my nemesis, and they would set off my monkey mind like nothing else. And as soon as that happened, more would appear, and there I go again, right? So it was funny. I was just thinking about that chapter the other day and kind of laughing about it because I've evolved so far since then. And then what happens? But I go out to fill up my hummingbird feeder again. I make this beautiful organic sugar water for them that they love, right? And the thing was covered in ants. And I went, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? But I laughed because I went, wow, universe, you're really showing me how far I came, because how far I've come, because I did not freak out. I set it out in the yard because I already have an agreement with my ants that if you stay out in the outer echelons of the outer portions of my yard, I'm not going to be tempted to kill you. Let's just be blunt, right? So I just set it out there and opened it all up so that any traces of the tea party they were having with the nectar, they could just finish it up. And then I went back out and got it later and cleaned it up and put new nectar in. But geez, isn't that great the way the universe will show us? There's so many times where we think, oh, I'm being punished. The universe is doing something hard and rotten to me. That's just a light example. That's not what many things that happen that this example can show us. A lighter version of other lessons that sometimes we say, gosh, why me, right? Why is this happening? But for that to happen and for me to be able to say, gosh, I've come this far, that is symbolic of other things that happen in our lives that are bigger, that we can step back from, and maybe we've already learned the lesson of whatever before. We can step back and look at that and say, gosh, thanks for that reminder. Maybe I'm watching someone fight at a distance in politics or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And I can say, wow, I've learned so much, and I'm thankful to see that, to regroup with my own learnings and step away, from it.
Oh, this is an incredible story. And you're right. I experience this sometimes, that I'm coming back to pain points, and I tend to think, oh, this is never going to change. I haven't learned it again. And all this, those voices in my head that Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul says, if you had them sitting next to you on your couch, you would show them the door.
Right.
And then when I'm getting a little kinder with myself again, I'm realizing, like you said, that it might have been the same theme, but it's maybe lighter, or it's not exactly the same anymore. And like you said, often it is hard to see the gift in the ugly stuff while we are experiencing it. It would be so nice if that was easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also surrendering, like, and letting go, like you said before, is one of the seemingly hardest things, because you cannot make it happen.
Right. It is. It is probably for me the hardest thing has been learning to surrender, and it's an ongoing journey for me. I don't know about for you.
Yeah.
I think for all of us, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And before I want to ask you about something about being an empath, I actually wanted to ask you for some advice for our listeners. So if they have read the book and they would really like to work with it and gain the most out of it, what would you recommend? How do they do it?
Well, my recommendation is, I say to each his own. It's so funny. I'll pick up a magazine and read it backwards. I've always flipped through a magazine backwards. Is that crazy? That's me. I'm different. But so if that's what strikes you, then that's what, more power to you. That's the way I want you to read the book. But it is set up to highly benefit, to be read the first time all the way through, not in one sitting necessarily, although it's a short read, but you read it all the way through and gain the cohesiveness of the story and the symbolism and everything. And then you can refer back to it. And it can be, I carried it as a guidebook myself whenever I wanted, like the forgiveness piece has some more complicated technique to it, let's say. So it's nice to be able to pick that book up and go to one of the chapters that references forgiveness. All the chapters have reference to the various tools, and reread it. And then the stories are written, the fables, they're written in form of a fable, in a simple fable, to help us cut through our mental conglomerations that we do.
Yeah.
So that it sticks with us better. Because when we get all mental and all left brained on this sort of thing, it doesn't stay with us as well as if we let ourselves kind of float with the simplicity of it and let the infectiousness of the story help it to build into our memory. So those are actually memory building tools. That's why the book was written in that way. It's funny, I've had some people read the book who just didn't expect such a simple book from LouAnne Ludwig, right? They thought I would write something really deep and really,
It is deep.
like, or Eckhart Tolle, but it's very simple for a reason, and that's so that those stories can stay with you and you can utilize them to help you build those tools into your everyday life. Down the line, I totally intend on writing something more deep and more involved in other ways, but always I want it to stick with you. If it's going to be something that's going to build into your life tools that will enhance your experience, right?
And the depth is very feelable. I believe there is lots of wisdom in simplicity, because it speaks to us in a different way. And like you say, it addresses more the whole part of ourselves and less the analytic one.
Yes. There's a lot of depth in this book, a lot of depth. And seriously, rereading the chapters brings more of that depth to your experience of reading it. Your experience of reading. You'll go, wow, I didn't see that the first time out. Wow, So.
Yes, exactly. I've read it 2 times so far, and it exactly happened like you said it.
Nice. Thank you for the feedback. I love that. Thanks.
You're welcome. And one thing that I don't know if you wrote it in the book, but I've read it on your website, is that you too are an empath. And I think there's actually many of us. So I know it's not exactly about this story, but do you have some tips and tricks for us fellow empaths to fully thrive in our life and to enjoy it as good as we can?
Yes, that's a great question, because there's so many of us who are noticing our empathic abilities more and more. And maybe we went through a good part of our life without realizing it, or some people have been this way from the beginning and utilized it forever and ever. Either way, there are a lot of people who are tuned into their intuitions and empathic gifts. And what happens is we're so sensitive to other people that we pick up their energy, and it can have a really big effect on us. I'm
Mm.
I am going through a process of learning to continue to brush myself off, to remain in my own energy. I'll brush and flick to the universe the energy of others sometimes, just to help myself feel. I think if nothing more, it's maybe symbolic and ritualistic for me to know within myself that I'm back in my own energy, and that brings it about, because that is me tapping into my universal forces within myself to bring me back into my center. That's the whole key that we're looking for. You know, um, Gosh, I am just now beginning to be in the same room with, let's say you walk, for me, just be in the room with media that has horrible things going on. I have to get up and leave sometimes. It's so bad, it would just impact me. There's movies that I won't watch because,
Yeah, me too.
right, they cut me to the quick and stay with me, and it's just not good for me. So I still will continue that kind of practice, but at least now I can not have to stay away from, keep myself sequestered so much. I can be out there because I'm learning different tools to aid myself in staying in my own energy. Meditation is a big one too, that helps us to stay in our own energy, connect with our higher self, with the universe at large, and become centered and grounded. It's a very good tool,
Yes.
especially if you're empathic, especially, but for everyone, really. There's businesses. Google sets aside time for people to meditate during the middle of their day. They have meditation
Yeah,
rooms and everything. How great is that?
this is absolutely great.
It is. The world is changing and it's becoming more mainstream. So it's good that people learn what to do to keep that energy, to stay in your own energy. It's important.
Yes. Yes. And I'm realizing, like you say, when I take care of myself and my inner state of being, it's easier, because in some way I feel like I wouldn't want to protect myself
Right.
from others, or shield myself. So if I can fill myself with myself as good as I can, it seems to be very helpful. And sometimes it seems it's when they're like unpleasant situations, it seems to me that maybe sometimes we just have to accept it, but be happy that we can enjoy other things more because we can feel them intensely.
Yes, what you just described is shifting your focus. You see whatever that is and you feel what it is and you deal with whatever it is, but then you're shifting your focus now. Let's step away and shift our focus to the butterfly that just flew by, or the breeze in the trees, or when you are feeling it real heavy. Like for me, if that little brushing off thing doesn't really do it, I'll just walk out into my yard or out into nature and just get grounded that way.
Me
Ground
too. Yeah,
nature, right? Yeah.
nature works wonders. Yeah. And so if there are people listening who want to know more about you, or maybe work with you, as because you're a dream expert, you're a psychic medium, or maybe would like to have help with their own empathic nature, where can they find you and how can they work with you?
Thank you. They can go to my website. It's LouAnneLudwig.com, and that's spelled LouAnneLudwig. And there are many helpful things on my website. My blog gives a lot of insightful little blurbs here and there. And then also in there, it talks about how to submit a dream through my website, or request an empathic reading to help you with an issue, or help you to find your truth, or any number of things. You can ask questions. So those are on my website right now. And my website is an evolving thing. So various things will continue to be offered in other forms. And, as we go, things will open up more and more.
And we will link to all the important places right below this interview so everybody can find you.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I wouldn't want to close this beautiful conversation without asking you, is there anything that we forgot or oversaw that actually needs to be mentioned?
You are so beautiful. Oh my goodness. I can't think of a thing. I have had a beautiful time with you, and I know we didn't go into the dream things and how important that is for people. But dreams help people whether they remember them or not. But if you want to be able to remember a dream, there's things about that on my website, and they can always go there and read about the symbolism of dreams and how it's really cued individually, and get a little more insight on that. I can't think of anything. It's been delightful. What have you? Can you think of anything?
I just so enjoyed it, but wanted to make sure that we didn't leave anything out.
Thank you.
So I thank you from my heart for spending this time and space with me.
And I thank you from my heart. Thank you so much.
Oh, sometimes the bad thing with digital conversations is that you cannot give each other a hug.
I know, right? But I think we just did, right?
Yeah.
Very good.
Goodbye, everybody. And always remember to take the driver's seat of this car called your life and create this lifetime to your taste. It's our pleasure here at Mind Gourmet to support you with our food for thought. Bye, everyone. Bye, LouAnne.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.